there was something in the paper last week about, a preschool that's the book of the month is like Johnny is a mermaid or something like that.
Okay.
And it's talking about, a boy who transitions into a girl, and they're going to read it every day.
Every day.
To the 3-year-olds. Or another one like, the title was something like, Billy likes pink. And it's sort of, that it's okay if boys like pink.
Yeah.
Kids by that age are only just learning their colours.
Yeah.
They don't need to be learning about gendered notions of colour and it's just ridiculous. Like you're removing the innocence of children.
Absolutely. It reminds me of the Safe Schools program coming back again. Like it's like I know that they implemented the Safe Schools program in Victoria. Mm-hmm. That was never implemented in New South Wales, but
no, certain schools did do it.
They did do it, didn't they?
Yeah, and actually the list of schools was pulled off the Department of Education website, so you weren't able to see which schools were teaching it.
But isn't that an imposition against the freedom that parents should have and the rights that parents should have to know what's being taught to their children within their schools?
Absolutely. This is the thing. These things seem to exist in the dark and intentionally be taken away from parents.
Wow.
And I think...
Yeah.
I think we get ourselves into some dangerous territory where you start saying that you want to teach kids matters about sexuality and it's hidden from the parents, right?
Yeah.
The only way to protect kids, particularly against those who might want to abuse them, is to encourage all conversations like that to be had with the full involvement of the parents so that children know. You never have those types of conversations where your parents don't know and your parents can't be told because... That's where,
especially at such a young age. And there's also a bill that's kind of related to that one, or maybe it's the same one, where the government is trying, or the bill by Daniel Andrews again, is trying to allow certain information or certain education to be taught within schools, and for parents to be left in the dark about that kind of education. Because I remember reading one of your articles. And there was either a bill or something that was being proposed whereby whatever's being taught within the classroom, it can be done without the parents' consent.
Oh, okay. So we're flicking to New South Wales now. We'll leave South Australia.
Okay, yeah. So it's related then. So this is what's happening now in New South Wales.
A little bit. So what's happened is Mark Latham, who you always can trust to swing a bit of a bat and pick a fight.
Good on him.
So he wants to make changes. He's proposed a bill to make changes to the Education Act, and that does basically two things. What it does is it talks about matters of parental primacy. So if there's anything really that deals with, the morals that your kids are being taught, religion, values, ideologies, politics, all of those things, this is what he defines as matters of parental primacy, which mean the school needs to let the parents know up front, in advance, there are going to be classes that touch on these issues. This is what's going to be taught, and then give them the right to remove their child if they don't want their child taught that, right? Okay. So it's about transparency with parents, accountability, and then giving them the choice about when and how their children learn about these matters. So that's the first aspect of it. And the second aspect is no gender fluidity to be taught in schools. That the idea that gender is fluid, it's a social construct, whatever it is, shouldn't be taught in primary school, it shouldn't be taught in high school, because that's not the place for ideas like that. It's getting a lot of opposition. It's funny, right? Like it's just, I don't know how people can argue against transparency to parents when it comes to the education of their children, but there are so many people fighting against it.
And so keep going. So
there's been a public consultation process. Submissions have gone in. A lot of organisations have made submissions. Then it'll go to the committee stage and see what happens with it. I'm not confident that it'll go anywhere. Mark Latham's, One Nation. You need the appetite of the government to let it go through. And I wish they had the political appetite and political will. I'm just not sure.
So if this law gets passed, it means that schools will be able to hide topics or certain bits of information from parents, and they can pretty much just remove them from having any kind of like role to play in what gets taught to their children within schools?
No, not necessarily. So this is what this is about is positively placing the legislation that there needs to be transparency and accountability for parents.
Which at the moment there is or there isn't?
Well, the thing is that at the moment it's contained in Department of Education policy rather than in the law.
Okay. Oh, so it's more of a policy, not a law. Okay.
So the policies at the moment, there's a policy that's sort of like the teaching of controversial issues in schools. And it says if you're teaching controversial issues in a school, you need to let the parents know, you need to give them the opportunity to opt out. If you're teaching sex ed, same type of thing. But what happens with programs like Safe Schools is they say, oh, well, no, this isn't controversial. This isn't sex ed. This is anti-bullying. Right? And so we don't need the parents' consent because this is anti-bullying, or, this is trying to challenge gender roles so that we don't have domestic violence. So this is about a safety.
Okay. And that's how they're trying to get around that?
That's how you get around the requirement in the policies that
But whose job is it then to be able to say to them, no, that's bull, it is sex ed, you're not allowed to teach that within schools? Whose job is it to say that and to enforce the law, to make sure that they don't come up with these kind of loopholes? Well,
so this is where the Department of Education needs to step in, because and there needs to be consequences, right? And so when it's governmental policy, when it's department policy, it's not the same type of consequences. So what Latham's trying to do is actually go, okay, well, it's in your policy documents. And so if you're serious about enforcing it, let's put it into the legislation, right? You talk about it there, let's put it in the law so that it's actually got some teeth. And of course he's getting resistance, because people who want to push these ideologies, who want to indoctrinate your children in the classroom, they don't want you to know about it. They don't want parents to know about it, right? Because these things are best done in the dark.
Absolutely.
Right? You bring them out into the light. And parents don't want it, right? Overwhelmingly. However sympathetic they are, however
and
in
are
favour...
are you speaking on behalf of Catholic parents or just parents in general?
Parents in general. So I worked on the marriage campaign. I was the communications director for the Coalition for Marriage. Back when they had the same-sex marriage vote. And what we found is, although polling consistently showed us that people were in favour of same-sex marriage, they also didn't want their kids being taught gender ideology in the classroom, right? They don't want it. And this is, no matter what your view on same-sex marriage, no matter what your view is on, transgenderism and all of those things, when it comes to bringing that into the classroom to impressionable young children, they're like, we don't want it. And the other thing is that, sorry, I'm going on about this one bit, the contagion effect. So as they push the gender ideology in the schools, the number of kids who present with gender dysphoria is skyrocketing.
Wow.
The year that Safe Schools was introduced in Victoria, I think there were maybe 6 kids going to the gender clinic annually. 6, and now that number's in its hundreds.
Wow.
There are studies that show, every time that, a positive transgender story appears in the media, there are more children that present as gender dysphoric. There is a contagion effect. It's there's a fashion to it. You can't have 5 or 6 kids 10 years ago, and now in one clinic getting hundreds, more than one a day.
Because it's funny though, because I remember reading one of your articles on this very issue, and in the UK, I saw some stats that when the UK court was judging a law or a bill that was going to get passed, they looked at some of the stats from the gender studies or the gender clinic, and they wanted to know, after these people decide to get it's the blockers, the hormone blockers. They wanted to know, well, when people present and they're having anxiety and they're having depression because they feel like they're the wrong sex, and they start to get puberty sex hormone blockers, and then they go through the therapy, they wanted to know, well, let's have a look at some data to see whether are these people still depressed afterwards. after they're getting the therapy, after they're getting the surgery, and they found that the data was missing because they didn't, and it was probably because it didn't work in their favour.
So, well, there are two here. There was a case in the UK where a young person who had transitioned and who had been pushed through this process ended up going, actually, this isn't what I wanted and it didn't help me, and so sued the National Health Service and the clinic, I think it was Tavistock, and just said, look, you mistreated me, like in the same, and then, so when the court was trying to investigate all of this, that's right, they had no data, not even on the ages of the children that they were pushing through these therapies. And then I want to say Sweden, but I might be getting the country wrong, and forgive me.
It's one of those Nordic countries. I know, because I was thinking of the same thing about were you going to say something along the lines that there are laws there that if a child wants to transition, they can do it without the knowledge and the consent of the parents?
That's not what I was going to say.
Because I heard in Western Australia there was a law that was going to get passed that allowed children who wanted to transition, even at the age of 13 or 14, they could do it without the consent of the parents.
Well, they're slowly starting to remove those. So it used to be that the family court had to approve, because it was like, it's not even a decision that the parents should make. It should be the family court as well.
Yeah.
That's been taken away. And then, slowly you're seeing the rights of the parents even, because... And so now it's a decision for child and doctor. But no, there was the biggest study ever done on surgical treatment and hormone treatment for transgender individuals. Ended up finding that there was no positive mental health or physical health benefits to the transition, and in some cases it increased anxiety. They did this study and then didn't like the conclusion, and so put all the data there and then wrote in the conclusion, well, actually, it has a positive effect in some cases.
Yep.
And then you had people actually going to read it and go, hold on, your conclusion doesn't match the data. So they had to come back out a few months later and correct it and say, well, actually, no, the data ends up showing that there's no positive benefits to it. Mm-hmm. But the science has become so ideological that even the people doing the research try and fit it into an ideological push. But what we know now is the biggest study of people who have gone through gender treatment, that there are no positive effects to it. So why are we doing it? Why are we pumping kids full of hormones?
Well, there must be money involved for some stakeholders, I guess. And I guess, like with the LGBT movement, I guess they've got a lot to gain from this, because they're getting everybody into this whole gender dysphoria. They're getting everybody feeling the same way. And
it's just, and again, this really does seem like an attack on the church and what we hold. Yeah.
And on the family as well. Like even separating the parents from the children as well.
Exactly.
Trying to make them completely separate individuals. And looking at children as well and saying, okay, you at the age of 10 or 11 or 12, we're going to take your opinion or your statements as though you're a full consenting adult with a fully developed prefrontal cortex, and we're going to just allow you to go through life-changing therapy that can't be reversed in almost all cases. Isn't that like if they end up mutilating their genitalia, what are they going to do?
Absolutely, and long-term effects on fertility.
Yeah,
like if you start pumping a teenager full of hormones, they might not ever be able to have kids, right?
Wow.
It's a really horrible thing to do.
Yeah.
But you're right about it being an attack on the family and a separation of the parents from the children. Yep. I have a good priest friend who said once, words I'll never forget.
Yep.
He said, if you want to destroy a society, you attack the priesthood and you attack the family.
And that's what's happening now.
And all of these laws that we're talking about
are attacking those two things, the
priesthood or the family.
Wow.
And we should probably touch on the confessional seal as well.
Well, let's touch on that. I was going to move.